two files. So you have an InDesign file and you have a poster JPEG. We're going to make like a little flyer today in InDesign and just learn how the program looks, how it functions, kind of the basic tools for it. Because it really is a great program if you have like a 3 to 5 page paper you have to write. And you want to set it up in something other than Word because you want it to be a little prettier. You want to be able to put some pictures in it. You want to make it look a little bit more like a newsletter or magazine instead of just a boring 3 to 5 page research paper. Maybe you get some extra points for it. I don't know. Some professors like when it's pretty, quotation marks, pretty. Students always come to me at some point in time outside of the class time and they're like, I have this project and I need it to look like this, or I want to add a paper texture to the background of my paper to make it look like it was written in the early 1900s. Like there's always some reason to use an Adobe program for something you're producing outside of class. And so InDesign is a great one for anything where it's content heavy, where it's writing heavy. It's a really great program for that. It's just not overly sexy. It's not overly pretty. It's constructed in a way for magazine designers and newsletter designers and people that are dealing with heavy amounts of copy that require text flowing from one page to the next. It's just kind of the nature of the beast with the program. So the very first thing we have to know about InDesign is that it is a container program. And by container program, I mean it takes files from other programs and compiles it into the InDesign program. Now, with that being said, it is a linkage program, which means everything is linked inside of InDesign, which means it's pointing somewhere else. Photoshop, everything's embedded in it. Illustrator, we create things in it. InDesign is a container program. So it accepts Illustrator, PSD files, all the files from other programs inside of it. So it is very similar to if you were creating a website. It needs a folder with all the stuff in it. So unlike Word, when you put a picture in, you move it around, you write the words around it, and the picture is in the document, the InDesign file, the picture isn't in the document. It's pointing somewhere else, which is really great because if you edit that thing somewhere else, a PSD file, an Illustrator file, it will update inside InDesign to show the new thing. So if you like take a drawing you did in Illustrator and you place the drawing in InDesign and you decide you want to change the colors in the drawing that's in Illustrator, if you change it and save it in your Illustrator file, InDesign will update it. It is connected. It is like picture windows that have stuff in it. So when you see something in InDesign, just remember that file actually exists somewhere else. So if your InDesign file doesn't travel with all the files that are made up inside your InDesign file, then you're going to get little empty X boxes. So we're going to see how frames work in InDesign and how images get placed in and kind of how this environment works. But your folder, which just like in web design we call root directory, your folder for this project has to have everything in it, and that folder has to travel with you wherever you go, because anything we put into the InDesign document is pointing somewhere else. So if you save something to the desktop here, you put the InDesign file on OneDrive, you get back to your dorm or your house or whatever, and you go and open your InDesign file, and you're going to have empty things in it, because the things are sitting on the desktop in here, which is a local computer, and your InDesign file is with you somewhere else. Now, if it's your own laptop, no worries, because it's on your desktop on your laptop, and when you leave here and you go somewhere else, all the files are still with you. So rule number 1 in multi-page design: magazine, newsletter, newspaper, long form, annual reports, anything that's multiple pages of content. Make a client folder. So on your desktop, let's make a folder and let's call it your last name flyer, because we're going to see kind of how InDesign works. We need this stuff to all be in one place. So in the announcement section, download the flyer template, download the JPEG of the flyer that I have for my nonprofit, and let's make a folder on the desktop. And let's just call it our last name, flyer. And let's put our InDesign template in there, and let's put our JPEG in there. So everything in this folder. So if you need to compress it on the desktop and upload it to OneDrive and then release it or decompress it when you go somewhere else, this folder has to travel together. So when I create multi-page solutions for my clients, annual reports, magazines, programs, brochures, any stuff that's multiple pages, I export out of InDesign a PDF. That way it is flattened. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good. All right, come on in. Come on in.
Sorry.
I saw you. I did see you. So I figured you'd be
Percy stopped us, and then Shelby stopped us, and I was like, oh.
From Kurt's office,
my
you guys
bosses.
stopped twice.
I said,
I
okay,
figured.
listen, when the people who sign my paychecks stop me on all yours.
Yeah. Tell them Chip said you have to get to class. Thanks for stopping me, but Chip said I have to get to class. All right. Now, make a folder on your desktop. Call it your last name flyer, and download the 2 files in the announcement section that are for our InDesign exploration today. InDesign, any experience with InDesign? It's not Canva, but
Like 2 times.
2 times. A little newsletter. Uh-oh. Reboot.
Yeah, I turned it
All
on.
right. Well, turning it off is good, dude. You have to turn off the laptop every once in a while. All right. So we got our folder. It is our client folder. Organization is really important here. How many people like line up their shoes in their closet? Anyone line up their shoes like
It stays like that for
a
a day.
day and then it's chaos again? Yeah.
I only have 3 pairs of shoes though, so it's really
So 3 pair of shoes, very easy. So I have a closet full of dress shoes that I line up. And then I have my dresser, and I line up my tennis shoes next to my dresser. Like, I'm a very type A personality. So if you fight the urge to be organized in the creative space, you really should practice every day being organized. Because it saves your life. Stress, heartache, time, money, all the things that should be relatively important to you. Like, I like having extra time. I like having a little extra money. I like having a little less stress. Like, organization is really important here. So I may take it over the top a little bit. Like, I match my clothes by color in my closet. So it's like, oh, it's a blue day. Maybe blue dress pants, light blue shirt. My shoes are going to be brown today, brown belt. Like, I am a very type A personality, which is very strange because I'm left-handed, which means I'm right-brained, which I would like to think I'm creative because of that, nature versus nurture. But I'm very organized, and by nature, creative people are not organized. Like, they're just chaotic. Like, which is funny because my wife is right-handed, which is left-brained, and she is the most disastrous person I have ever seen as it relates to organization, shoes, clutter. Like, the yin and yang is real. Like, drop shoes there, Chip picks up, put shoes over there. Like, I think she's trained me, like, oh my gosh, all your clothes are at the end of the bed. You just put them back in the room and put them in the closet. Like, that's where they should be, in the closet, in the hanger, not at the end of the bed. I love, right? So, very type A personality. InDesign requires type A personality. So, if your brain is a bit of a gerbil running on a wheel, which mine is at times, organization, very important. Okay, folder on your desktop, last name flyer. Inside there, the InDesign flyer file, all I do is prep a couple of icons, different things like that, put them into a document for us, and a JPEG, which is just a flyer I took off Facebook for my nonprofit, so we had some content to play around with to structure our flyer. Now, once you do all of those things, go into your applications folder, and I would like you to open InDesign. InDesign's so nice. Welcome to InDesign, Chip. I like that. So let's open InDesign. Once you have your files in your folder, everything is happy-go-lucky. You got everything that we need to at least start with this thing. Just as a repeater, reinforcer, this is a container program. Everything exists somewhere else. A folder is really important because they're called assets, and all the assets need to be in your folder, which is in the same location as your InDesign file, because it is linked. just like a website is linked. So pictures exist in an images folder in a website, and the link points you to there. InDesign is no different. Illustrator is starting to eat into InDesign space because now you have multiple artboards. You can also do text and images. You can also do a lot of the same things. The difference with InDesign is it controls content very well. You can flow content from one column to the next. You can flow content from one page to the next. And as you make edits, InDesign updates. All of those things are great. With that being said, it is super dry. So it's only as good as the assets you have. So the prettier the pictures, the better the content, the glossier the stuff, the better your design looks. The more boring, and by boring I mean like a newsletter that someone produces and sticks in a little newsletter holder in the front of, a space, and you go in, it's just 3 columns of text with a nice big header. That's boring. It was made in InDesign, especially if you see it and it's 3 columns, because columns are really important in InDesign for structure. All right, when you open InDesign, do you have it down there?
It was, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Is 2024 on there?
It was telling me that I couldn't open the file.
Without it? That's
The
okay.
file and you were-
Yeah, that's okay. You can actually go into the application folder and just force open. We're not going to open the flyer InDesign file yet, so you can just go so InDesign technically is open, right? Click OK. And close the little X there. It's fine. You don't need to worry about the font, so just click the little blue button. We're not going to open the flyer just yet, but you do have InDesign right here, so you should be able to. So we'll just do convert file. It's not a big deal because it's just a template and we're going to modify it anyway. So that should be fine. There we go. Okay, so close that because I'm going to go back to the start screen. Yep. Yeah, that's weird. Mine isn't updated on my computer, so I don't know why it did that. At least I didn't think it was updated, but I might have cloud update on my home office computer where it just automatically updates while I'm asleep and didn't even realize it. I did notice Photoshop and Illustrator all did 2025 updates, but my computer at home is updated, but my office computer isn't. And my office computer has an admin password, so I can't update it yet, so that's going to be interesting. Yes, the nature of technology. All right, so when you open up InDesign, it looks a little bit different than the other start screens. When you open up Photoshop, Photoshop is asks you for things like, hey, are you making this for a website? What is the resolution of this thing? Like, what is the pixel ratio? It asks you all these things that have to do with photos. Illustrator doesn't even care. It just says, how many artboards do you want? What's the size of the artboards? Let's rock and roll. InDesign kind of starts asking you formats that would be for content-heavy areas, but you will notice that it now has added web and tablet dimensions to its program, which it didn't used to do. It is starting to reinvent itself. You actually can make interactive wireframe designs for websites in InDesign. Why you would do that, I have no idea, but for those that like columns and like organization and like rows and like structure, InDesign is the program for you. Now, we are going to open up a letter-sized piece of paper. So we can either do File, New File, or we can click the cute little icon in our start screen. That is our letter piece of paper. And we don't need this little animation because I am the animation. And so here is our lovely little document in InDesign. Now, some things about InDesign. InDesign has a toolbar on the left-hand side, same as every other Adobe program. InDesign has palettes on the right-hand side, same as every other Adobe program. It does function a little bit different as far as where content is as it relates to objects that you have selected. So, before we do anything, let's go up to our workspace. So we want to go up to our window drop down. We want to go to workspace and just make sure essentials is turned on, because we just want the basic stuff. Just like every other Adobe program, we spend a lot of money, time, energy, and effort into structuring workspaces based on the type of output that you are creating. The essential settings in all of the Adobe programs are the original palette structures of the program before you get all the glossy, fancy stuff in there. So this is just the standard stuff for us right now. Now we will go into the window drop down and we will open some additional palettes to kind of see how things work, but we just want to keep it very simple at first. Now, you'll see a couple of things you may recognize from other programs. There is both a black selection arrow and a white selection arrow. Now, is there a black selection arrow and a white selection arrow in any other program? Absolutely there is. Adobe Illustrator has the black selection arrow, which selects an object in Illustrator. It has a white selection arrow that selects a point or node in your object. If you want to select just one shape of your object in Illustrator. InDesign is no different. It has a global selection arrow, which is the black arrow, which selects our container or our object, and it has a direct select arrow, which selects the object inside of the container. So that aspect of it functions a little bit like Illustrator. Now, as you look down the toolbar, you'll probably see some things that you have seen before, like a pen tool, and a pencil tool, and a line segment tool, and a text tool. All tools we've used before, either in Illustrator or nosing around a little bit in Photoshop. So there are some things that you probably recognize from other programs. Like I said, it's a suite of applications. So InDesign fills the void of multi-page design. It's not the sexiest, not the prettiest, but it is what it is. Now, everything we bring in is linked from other places, so it is pretty much a cut paper, compile it on your desk kind of program. Oh, I'm going to cut this picture out, put it here. I'm going to write some words on a piece of paper. I'm going to put it here. It's pulling things from all over the place and compiling it in here. So we're going to use it that way. Now, let's go to our Pages tab, because the most important aspect to kind of understand about InDesign is that it works inside of a master environment, a master page environment, which means it has a page behind the scenes that controls elements that appear on every page. So you can think of a magazine or a book that you're reading or a novel. There are elements that appear on every single page of that magazine or every single page of that novel, like the page number, like the name of the book that may run along the top or bottom of the page. On any given page, there might be a chapter name or a section of the magazine that runs 10 pages. If it's fancy, the sections of the book or the publication might have certain colors associated with it. So like the right edge of the page is red, the first 20 pages. The right edge of the paper is yellow, the next 20 pages. InDesign works in an environment where it has, just like PowerPoint, which has a master slide, InDesign has a master page. Now, when you click on the Pages tab, you're going to see that there is page number 1, which is the page that we're on, and it is highlighted blue. You probably now notice that it has a master environment, so right up here. So let's double click our mouse up in the A parent area, Now, this is what's called a spread, which the way InDesign works is, it works just like a printer would think. So I don't know if you've ever duplexed a document before or printed something that is two-sided. InDesign works already thinking, wow, you would like pages to be touching like a magazine would be, but you might also like it to print on the other side of those pages. So InDesign works in an environment where it's already thinking ahead for you. Oh, you're going to want to add 7 more pages. Now, the way printing world works is we call it a 4-up process. So if you ever looked at a magazine and you open it up, it has staples on the side. The staples on the side are what we call saddle stitch. So when you open a magazine up, the magazine is actually 2 pages together, right? It's like this. So you have what's called a spread. So the front of the article would be on this side, the left side of the spread, and the other part of the article would be on the right side, right? But it's all one piece of paper, and it's folded like this, and there are staples put on the side, saddle stitch, like this. You open it up. Now, magazines work in what's called a 4-up environment, which means there's actually 2 pages touching, and then 2 more pages here touching. So there's 4 pages technically, because what a printer does is they fold that page and then fold it again, and that's what makes our saddle stitch inside of the magazine. So when you're doing multiple page documents and it's something that might be printed or produced later, you should work in an 8-page environment. So if you have 8 pages, thumbs up, which could include the cover and the back cover. If you end at 14, you should find 2 ads to make it 16, because it works in an 8-page or 4-up environment. 4 pages on the front side, flip it over, 4 pages on the back side. It's folded and cut so that they can staple it in one spot, called saddle stitch, and that's how a magazine opens up. So if you ever counted the pages to a multi-page document that opens up like this, it's in sequences of 8 pages. Because if it's less than 8 pages, then they have to run a special page called an insert and cut that separately from all the other pages. So sometimes you'll open up something and it'll be like page, 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 and then there'll be a special little clear page or an insert page that's kind of floating in this thing. That's because it didn't equate into the 8-page or 4-up process. So they had to print that separately. That becomes very expensive. Now, I'm saying all that, and people put all their menus online, and they do everything online. So the idea of actually printing something that requires a 4-up process is starting to become less and less. I know I came in here and rambled about why do we print an Valkyrie magazine, and why do we spend all the money on printing and all this process, because it's really expensive, and people just want to read it online through Apple News, right? But that still is a thing. So I feel like going to the bookstore and opening up a book and looking at a magazine and smelling the paper and, oh, is this 100-pound text paper? And see what that is. Like, I still like that, but
You don't buy them just to collect?
say that again?
You don't buy them just to collect?
Sometimes I buy them for those collect. Yeah, I have a huge collection of things I just bought to collect, but I do buy to read too on occasion. But yeah, so the 4-up process is still a thing, and that's the foundation of InDesign. InDesign was actually Quark Express, which was the name, which got purchased and purchased and purchased, and it kind of evolved into this Adobe application. It is in your brain, if you're thinking creative process, it is for content-heavy, multi-page documents. If it's less content, words, you can actually do it in other things. Like the ad design class, we're doing trifold brochures. It's not going to be a lot of text. It's going to be a lot of pictures. You could do it in Photoshop or Illustrator, because both of those programs have pictures and have text. But from an organization standpoint, this program is the best for content heavy. Now, master page. This little line in the A master that runs through the middle is called the fold. Now, you'll notice in the master, if we double click, there's a left and a right master, all part of a spread. So this is 11 by 17. The master is 11 by 17. It's 8.5 by 11 on the left, 8.5 by 11 on the right. It has the fold through the middle. Which page is page number 1? Can you see the fold line in page number 1? Is there a vertical line running anywhere near the thumbnail over here on page number 1? Right over here. Do you see this vertical line running on the left edge of page number 1? That means it's the right master. So every time we add a page, it's going to add it based on the fold line. So if we click the little plus symbol at the bottom of the pages property, so let's click the little plus symbol. Let's click on page number 1. So we'll just click back so that we're on page number 1. And let's add the plus symbol. Where did it go? Left of the fold. Page number 1, right of the fold. Page number 2, left of the fold. Fold line in the middle. Page number 1, right master. Page number 2, left master. Does that make sense? So InDesign works in a multi-page publication environment. Fold line is very important, the one that runs through the middle. When you make a new document, it will always have a master, and the master will always be a spread to start with, because it wants to do the 4-up process. 4 pages on the front of a piece of paper, flip it over, 4 pages on the back of a piece of paper. If you've ever seen a large format printer run magazine jobs, it's like huge sheets of multiple pages all touching together that the machine prints, cuts the edges of, cuts the middle of, folds, and saddle stitches. It does it like really quickly. It's really impressive. But InDesign works in multi-page facing pages with a fold. So that center line is the fold. So if we add anything to that right master, it's going to appear on every page that's on the right side of that fold. So add the third page. Add the third page. So is even or odd right master?
Or,
Odd. All the odd pages are right master. All the even pages are left master. The master is where you put information that you want to appear on every page. So would an article title go in the master? Does the article title appear on every single page? It does not. Nope. An article title only appears as the lead-in to an article. Would the date of a publication go in the master? It could, because it would more than likely appear on every single page. I haven't opened lately the Valkyrie magazine, but I'm going to guess it says Valkyrie on every single page. Somewhere in the upper left-hand corner or lower left-hand corner, I would guess, because that's traditionally where you put a title to a book or a magazine. But if you haven't been to Barnes & Noble and cracked open a magazine at any point in time in the last few months, go crack open a magazine and take a look at the elements that appear on every single page. If you have Apple News, open up a magazine. If you go online to any particular publication you follow, open up the digital magazine. Take a look at what appears on every single page. It will appear either in the top margin or the bottom margin of the document. It will appear every single time on the right spread, or it will appear every single time on the left spread. That's how InDesign works. And publication world works in InDesign. Now, does the objects that we put in the dark area of this file that we opened exist actually in finished work?
no.
The pasteboard does not exist. You can put stuff over there, but the only thing that exists is what's inside the white part of this document. So it is just a pasteboard. Can you see it though?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see it. So if you put text or an image, or you put stuff you might want to eventually want to use in your layout out there, you can see it. Can you see it in Photoshop? The pasteboard? Nope. Can you see it in Illustrator? Yep. Yeah. Adobe's kind of weird like that. Like it's invisible pasteboard in Photoshop, so images get cropped at the edge of your document. You can't see the pixels that exist over there unless you move your object in your pasteboard over your artboard area. So that's weird. But Illustrator allows you now, well, they've always allowed you to use the pasteboard, but now they allow you to use multiple pages. The difference between Illustrator, multiple page artboard, and InDesign, multiple page artboard, is that InDesign has master pages. So if you're really doing something that requires a lot of content, and you want to organize it page by page, the text flows well in InDesign, and you can number all the pages, or you can put a pretty picture in the background, and it's on every page. It's because it exists in a master page environment. Now, just so that we can see how this functionality happens, let's double click on the right master. So let's go back up into the master window, and let's go into the right master. So let's double click on the right master. So we're going to double click, and it's going to bring us right up here. Now, If we hold down our space bar, right, it's a spread. So there it is. Left master, right master. For the sake of seeing how this environment works from a text standpoint, from a master page standpoint, kind of how this thing functions as a container program, let's take our text tool. So let's take our little text tool. Everyone knows how to use text tool. We've used it in Illustrator for our nonprofits, style guides. We've added some text in Photoshop for our little advertisement poster thing we made. So let's take the text tool. Now, with the text tool, let's just click and drag a box. Click and drag a box. Now, InDesign is a container program, which means it wants boxes, it wants organization, it wants format. It doesn't want free-flowing. It doesn't want non-structured, asymmetrical, rotated stuff, skewed stuff, distorted stuff. It doesn't want any of that stuff. It wants straight up and down, straight left and right, everything having its place. So when we make containers in InDesign, we are going to make bounding boxes. We are going to make blue boxes that accept stuff inside of them. It wants organization, vertical and horizontal. If you love grid paper and drawing little lines between the boxes, which I enjoy at times, right? InDesign is your thing. If you like vertical and horizontal and clean and spaces and boxes, InDesign might be your thing. It's so funny when students start to learn a little bit about graphic design, and the pendulum always kind of does this thing between the programs. I can always tell very quickly who might be really good at publication design or multi-page design, because their brain already works in containers and rows and columns and guides and all the things that make InDesign really good. And then I can see students who like twitch a little bit when we get into InDesign because it's like, oh my gosh, this isn't fun. There isn't anything pretty about this thing. Like everything has its own little box. You can push the envelope with InDesign, but the way you push it is by using other programs. Actually, not by using InDesign. So if you want fancy, pretty, asymmetrical, rotated, distorted things, you create them in places like Photoshop, and then you place them in as a container inside InDesign. So InDesign is a collection program. I call it a container program. All right, so just for the sake of the process, let's type in the name of your nonprofit. I don't know what yours is, but let's type in the name. I'm going to do Keep Rome Floyd Beautiful, so let's just type that in. Right, so now, let's click on our little Properties tab up here, because Properties tabs exist in every single Adobe program. Where is the Properties tab inside of Photoshop when you have a tool selected? Properties. Like, so when you click on something in Photoshop and you're like looking at the thing, it has a Properties tab just like this, and it runs along the peripheral. Ever notice where the Properties window is or tab that runs? It runs along the top. So when you like do text and you highlight it, the Properties run along the top. In Illustrator, when you type stuff or do something, select an object, the Properties run along the top. If you do something in Dreamweaver, the Properties run along the bottom. If you do something in Adobe Animate, the Properties run along the bottom. It's so strange that they move it top, bottom, but it has a lot to do with the functionality of the program. But every program has a Properties palette, and the palette always appears on the right-hand side. This is no different. The only difference in InDesign is it's built for text. So it has paragraph alignment. It has leading and kerning. It has all the little spacing attributes you might want to do with text, which you also have in your character palette in Illustrator. You have to hunt and peck a little bit in Photoshop. InDesign is built for it. So let's pick a font that is one of the fonts that you selected from your nonprofit. So we want to stay consistent with brand. So we picked like 2 typefaces in your style guide. Make sure you pick one of those inside of InDesign. We're going to create color swatches that are going to match the color swatches in your style guide. We're going to use text, but it needs to be text from your style guide format. Consistency, consistency, consistency. We're going to copy and paste and place in images, all from your style guide. Consistency, consistency, consistency. So it doesn't matter what program you're in, the colors are the same, the fonts are the same, and the images are the same. Okay, beautiful. So let me change mine. I have Avenir. I love when I pick Avenir because then I don't even have to think about it because it's my favorite typeface. So I'm going to do Avenir. Now, let's talk a little bit about the character palette down here on the right-hand side. A couple of lines that are really important to understand in multi-page design or desktop publishing or magazine layout or whatever you want to call this program. You obviously have the character point size, 12 point being the default legible, readable size of text. I'm going to guess when you get a research paper from a professor and they're like, they want it 12 points, they want it yada, 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 they want it double space, they want it single space, whatever that format is. InDesign is built for that. So by default, it traditionally sets type when you create a text box to 12 point because that is readable, legible text size for paragraphs or long format writing. But it has the ability to adjust it. Now, when you do multi-page or multi-surface design, something to just keep in mind when you're using words. When you're using words, paragraph, legible, readable font size is 12 point. If you are moving to a caption or a headline or something that has a difference in scale larger than the paragraph readable text, so like an article title, a caption, a tagline, that sort of thing, you always want to go up 2 sizes in the character palette. So you'll see 12 point is the default size of readable paragraph text. The next size is 14, and after that is 16. If you want to make a visual separation between paragraph text and words that are more important, you want to go at least what's called 2 steps up. So let's do 16 point or 18 point size for the name of your nonprofit text here. Now, when you click on the little drop-down arrow, this is what I mean by 2 steps. So you'll notice that these are the default sizes for type. Now, this is something as a rule of thumb that should run across the board if you're using Photoshop, Illustrator, anything. But it's really important in multi-page design because you're using lots of words and you want to be able to separate the importance of words based on font, font's weight, and size. So if default paragraph is 12 point, in order to make something appear more important, appear larger, appear as something I'm going to read if I don't read the paragraph, you want to go at least 2 steps. So you'll see 18 point is 2 steps from 12 point. Anything beyond 18 point shows visual separation, shows the words are more important than the other words. In paragraphs, you can do bold, you can do italic, you can do color change to also control the visual eye. But from an information standpoint, if you're doing a headline, you're doing a caption, you're doing some tag information, you want to make it at least 2 steps. So we'll go 18 point, just so that you can see the size difference. Now, I'm spending a little bit of time on typography because InDesign is a text program. It prints text super clean. It's like you're typing it on a typewriter. Like, it is built for words. It plays with pictures fine, but it is built for words. So you have to know a little bit about type and how type works visually, because this program is all about type. So we have fonts, which we already know, right? Times New Roman, Garamond, Avenir, Helvetica, any, Monotype Cursiva, Comic Sans, any of the fonts that you may or may not like, right? That's a style of letter, A, B, C, D, E, F. You have the font family, so you have italic, you have bold, you have medium, you have condensed, which means it's really skinny and tall. Fonts have font families. The more font families inside of that font, the more flexibility you have, because technically you're only using one font. You're just using the family members in the font. So like when I'm picking something for publication design, or I'm doing something that has multiple pages of words, I try to pick fonts as my primary fonts that have multiple family members. So that way if I need a bold italic, I have it. If I need a regular bold, I have it. If I need just italic, I have it. So I try to choose ones that aren't just Roman, or just aren't regular, ones that give you flexibility, because when you're dealing in a multi-word environment, you want to be able to separate your elements the best leading. And you'll see there's an A with a line, and then arrows up and down, and another A with a line. This is really important in multi-word design. Leading is the space between lines. So when they originally printed newspapers, flyers, magazines, they would use a tray of letters, metal or wood. You've probably seen them before, printing plate. They would line the letters up, and they would take pieces of lead and they would stuff them in between this line of words and this line of words. The more pieces of lead, the bigger the separation between line of text here and line of text there. So leading is the terminology for the amount of space between lines. If it is really tight, is it hard to read? Like when the words are like really close line-wise together. Yes. If it's really far apart, is it hard to read? It is. It makes it look like bullets, not like a line of text, like a paragraph of text. So InDesign does a great job of auto-leading, which means spacing out the lines of text based on the size of the character. So as the size of the character goes up, the space between the lines go up. Because text has a baseline, which means the line that the text sits on when you write a sentence, and it has a cap height, which means the maximum height of the line of text based on the largest letter option inside of your alphabet. So capital A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, blah, blah, blah. Right? So that cap height is the maximum height, and the baseline is the line the text runs on. InDesign is really important from a standpoint of type because it allows very easily to adjust character size and leading spacing based on the cap height and the baseline of a font you select. It makes it where when you write lots of words, it's easy to read by default. We can adjust that based on the type elements we're using, but by nature, by default, it's auto leading is really good. Now, if you move down to the VA, with the arrows going across, that is called kerning. Kerning is the space between letters, not space between lines. It does a really good job also of handling lots of lines of text, lots of words, lots of letters, so they're spaced correctly for legibility and readability. But remember, originally, flyers, posters, magazines, they were made with blocks of wood or blocks of metal. Well, does a letter, A, B, C, D, E, and F, take up the same amount of space on a block? They don't. That was what the problem was with early printing. The slug, the letter was on the same size piece of wood or metal, but the letter on it was a different size based on the cap height, how the letter was constructed. So if you look at really early on printing samples, there would be weird justification, weird spaces between the letters. The reason it was weird was because every letter was on a square, but not every letter had the same width and height. Like a capital A is really wide, but it technically has a lot of negative space. If you put an A next to an M that's very vertical and also very wide, the space that's made in between those two letters is different than, say, a Z or a Q or a T, right? The positive and negative space of a letter is different. So if they were all on square blocks, the kerning would be different. Well, InDesign is very smart. Every desktop publishing program is very smart. Word is very smart now. It auto-kerns or auto-spaces the letters based on the negative space, not a wood block. And so InDesign is a multi-page program. It does great with leading, line spacing. It does great with kerning, spaces between the letters, and it does a really good job of cap height and baseline to make everything super organized. That's why magazines and newspapers, and newsletters, and annual reports, and catalogs. I mean, I don't know if Target still sends out the Black Friday catalog, right? I love that thing. I don't know, my kids are all grown, but I still go through the toy section. I'm like, hey, what's the latest toy? Is it like a stuffed animal? Is it, is it a hoverboard? Like, what is the thing, right? That's InDesign because it's multi-page, it's folded, it's saddle stitched, and there's a lot of text on it. Now the pretty part of it, the background of it, all the little toys with a nice red background, so pure on it, the black is black and the white is white, is because it's InDesign. InDesign is the champion of type. So just know as you're looking at things, if the text is super crisp and the font is super saturated with color and it's perfect shapes, odds are it was overlaid in InDesign on top of an image or an illustration to get it super clean. Can you do it in the other programs? Yeah, but if you look at a book cover and the letters are foiled and it is just a beautiful text thing, the book cover was put into a spread like this. The image was created in Photoshop or Illustrator, but the name of the book, the author, the publisher title at the bottom, all of that stuff, the spine text, the description of the author on the back of it, all InDesign, because it just prints type beautifully from an artistic standpoint, spacing, all of that functionality of type. So if you see it super clean, so think about packaging design, the nutritional box, all the heavy text elements you see, they were generated in InDesign. That's why they're so crisp and clean. All right, so we now know that the character palette has character size. 2 steps up or down in the character palette is how you adjust font size to make sure the viewer sees it in order. So if you want it to be really important, it needs to be 2 steps up at minimum from standard reading paragraph, which is 12 point. If you want it to be smaller, like a copyright, a legal disclaimer, stuff you really don't want the viewer to read, you want to go at least 2 steps down from 12 point, which is readable paragraph text, so it becomes less important. If you see a copyright running along the spine of something, so it's rotated on its side and it's running up and down, which you might see on the gutter of a magazine, which means on the inside fold area of it, it's normally 8 or 9 points. Sometimes they even push a little smaller to 7 points. 7 points are really ridiculous. But it's 8 points. The reason it's still clear or crisp is because it's InDesign. The type was written at 7 or 8 point in InDesign and rotated on its side, so it's legible and readable. For legal purposes, it needs to be, but it's still really, really tiny. If you make 6, 7, or 8 point type in Photoshop, it look like it was smudged. Because even if it's 300 dpi, it's based on pixels. And the pixels, when you get that small, get really iffy. Like the letter forms just aren't very good. And if you choose really dainty type, something that's really skinny, and you make it 6, 7, or 8 point in Photoshop, it's going to look like non-existent, like barely there. The ad design class is doing web banners, and one of the students submitted beautiful type, but it was super, super, super thin, and the size of the words were super, super, super small, and it's like, I can't even read this thing. Now, we didn't talk about InDesign, but if they had InDesign, they could have laid that type even at that size, even with that font, over top of it, and it would have been clear. Because InDesign is built for letters. Kerning, leading, and clarity. It is a desktop publishing program. Okay, so now we know font families, we know character size, up and down 2 step levels. We know leading is the space between lines. If you adjust that leading to smaller, it's hard to read, it gets really tight. If you adjust that thing to larger, you're adjusting it because you want it to read like bulleted items, not a paragraph. All right, good. Last but not least, everyone knows paragraph alignment, so we know left align, right align, center align, justified, all standard spacing of both kerning and line spacing in order to make it feel like one thing or another. If you align it to the left, it gives you a hard left edge. If you align it to the right, it gives you a hard right edge. Pretty simple desktop publishing kind of things because you use Word on a daily basis, I would guess. But InDesign is like Word on steroids. Like it really is a good program to use all kinds of stuff. Like if you want to make a really pretty multi-page document and wow the professor with the beauty, maybe because you weren't inspired by the words, put it together in InDesign because you can make background images and you can make pictures where the text wraps around it. Like you can really make it a visual experience. So maybe it distracts a little bit from the words and it's like, well, they did okay writing, but man, this thing is beautiful. A for them, right? So it's way better than Word, but it does deal with a lot of the same aspects that Word does. Word's just very rigid because it's literally a program for writing memos and single-page documents and letters and things like that. InDesign is built for magazines and pretty stuff. It just is built on words. Okay, now let's go to our global selection arrow. So here is our global selection arrow. Now, InDesign is a container program. So take your handle of your container box and pinch it in. It is built on the concept that you have a box and you have stuff in the box. When it's words, it forces the words to fit in the box. So now, just for the sake of the process, let's highlight our nonprofit word and do Command C or copy. And I want you to put a period after your name of your nonprofit and hit the space bar and do paste, 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 paste. Paste it over and over and over again. Paste it 10 times, 15 times. So just Command C, highlight it, put a period, hit the space bar, and paste, 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 paste. Just hit paste, Command V over and over and over again, like 10 times. And once you do that, let's switch back to our global selection arrow. This is our global selection arrow. So we can move our text around. Just clicking on it with your black arrow. Now, what you see here in the pink and purple lines are called margins. Now, we know margins because I preach the idea of giving yourself a little wiggle room when you lay something out in Illustrator or Photoshop. Like, don't put it all the way on the edge because that thing might get printed and it'll get cut off. Or don't put it all the way on the edge because someone will not be able to read all of it because it'll feel too cramped on the edge. Well, InDesign is a publication program. It's a desktop publishing program. It's a lots of words program. It is built on the idea of safety, room around the edges. So when you set up a document inside InDesign, it automatically gives you safety lines. And that's what these lines are. They are not printable. They are strictly guides to say, hey, don't put your text outside of this box because it's going to get folded, it's going to get printed, it's going to get cut. The fold line is called the gutter. So this little space right here is called the gutter. Gutter not good for bowling, gutter not good for layout. Anybody like bowling? I like bowling. Bowling's fun. Do you have duck pin bowling here? Anyone heard of duck pin bowling? If you're from New England, it's called candlestick bowling. You know candlestick bowling where it's the little tiny pins, but you have a small ball like a bocce ball, and the lane is actually technically the same length as 10 pin, which is what you probably have here, 10 pin, the bigger pin with the bigger ball, with the holes in it, put your fingers in. Duck pin has a small ball like this, like the size of a bocce ball, and you get to throw it 3 times for every frame. Never heard of that before? Nothing? Man, you guys, you've got to experience this. This is great. Duck pin bowling. I know they have them in Chattanooga. They have duck pin bowling lanes. Now, over the years, duck pin has evolved, and now that it's an arcade style game. So you'll actually go to a place that has arcades, and the duck pin bowling will be the same size ball. It'll be the same size pins, but they'll be on strings. And so you'll roll the ball and knock the pins down, and whichever ones you knock down, the strings will pull them up, and what's left are the pins you have to continue to knock down. And you get 3 throws instead of 2. The first one is a strike, the second one is a spare, the third one is just to get whatever pins you can. Wow, we turned into a bowling lesson during InDesign. Sometimes I'm amazed. Yes, candlestick. Candlestick bowling, duck pin bowling, I can't believe you guys have never heard of that. Well, you're missing out. So if you like bowling and you ever go somewhere that isn't here, see family, vacation, yada, 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 look for duck pin and candlestick bowling. It's like a really big thing. But anyone can do it because the size of the ball is a bocce ball. Anyone can throw a bocce ball. You still roll it. It still has wax on the lane. It's still wood. There's still a line that you can't go over. It still has arrows. It's everything that big bowling is, but it's way less stress. It's only a tiny ball. I grew up in Maryland and we had duck pin bowling everywhere, so I thought everyone had duck pin bowling. Gutter bad in bowling, gutter bad in InDesign. You don't want anything between that center fold line and the safety line, which is called a margin. That is our gutter area. So let's move our words And just for the sake of the process, let's move it so that it matches perfectly in the upper left-hand corner of our margin. The upper left-hand corner of our margin. Now, this is our container, or what's called our frame. So watch what happens when I stretch this thing out. The larger I make the container, the more words I can see. As I pinch it in, the words get longer down the page, but less in width. That is called text wrapping. I would make a joke about a wrapper, but I'm not really up to speed on the current wrappers. I see them on T-Mobile commercials and stuff, but I don't know any of the, hey, has Sharpay, whatever, chaperone, yada, 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 yada. Yeah, does she have any music with any kind of rapper style musicians? Who's a big, you know, what's the name of a current rapper? Who's the popular one now? There's got to be a few. Come on, give me one.
Rappers?
Yeah,
Drake.
Drake. Drake's still a thing? All right, I got to Spotify Drake. I haven't heard Drake in a while. I do know that Drake is from Toronto. Canadian dude? I do know that. Yes. I've got to change my Spotify over to some different genres so I can pick up a few different things. It's been a minute. What are you laughing for?
Have you
I
been
try to
following
stay
what,
up to
Have you been
speed.
following what people are saying about Drake?
I don't know a thing about Drake, other than he's Canadian, he is from Toronto, he wears a lot of sports jerseys. He
He's
used to be
also,
on
people are also accusing him of being a pedophile.
Oh, he's on that list? Is he,
Yeah.
is
He is, you're right,
Is he
he
on the
is.
P. Diddy list?
Yeah, he's up,
All right.
it's bad.
I was going to say P. Diddy, but that's not a proper term right now. That guy's not good.
Did you see that everyone thought Beyonce was in hiding that she posted yesterday?
Why would she be in hiding? Because she tied to P. Diddy in some way, shape, or form?
Oh, yeah. She's accused of being murdered.
Ugh, brutal. And then you got Jay-Z. Yeah, they're still together. I can't believe that. How does that even work? It's money. Money always keeps people together. That's why I'm amazed Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck are getting divorced for the 9th time.
They'll be back together in a week.
Because they both have so many
It's-
assets and they're so tied together.
Just think, right, just think how much money they're getting from this press.
Well, they love it for
Oh,
sure.
it's so good.
It's messed up.
I'd be shocked at what, I'd hate to think of it as a publicity stunt, but it's genius.
Yeah, it's just like Taylor Swift and the whole dating the football guy. The NFL shows her on TV about 45 times a game because it's press. It's money.
Oh, yeah.
Sell more jerseys,
And
sell more tickets.
as they should.
Yeah, as they should. So, all right. So, text wrapping, not to be confused with Drake,
Yeah, don't, long story short, don't listen to Drake.
is how InDesign is built. Pictures are built inside of containers. Text is inside of a container. InDesign wants everything in a box, whether it be a rectangle, a square, a circle, an ellipse, which means naturally it has negative space, that is space like a checkerboard, or space like polka dots. Everything wants to be inside of a container. Now, let's take our text container and let's make it small. So let's make our text container small. Now, there's two really important behaviors or attributes inside InDesign to kind of see, recognize, understand. Number one is text containers that have more words than the amount of words you currently see inside your box are defined by that little red plus symbol, the little red plus symbol. So if you ever create text inside of InDesign and there is a little red plus inside your text container, you draw a box, you type words, or you paste words, and all of a sudden the box wasn't big enough, it's got a little red plus there. You can tie text together to boxes, and that's what makes InDesign a beautiful thing. Now, if you take your little mouse, your global selection arrow, which is the black one, and you click on that red plus, you're going to see that your mouse becomes like a mini paragraph. It's telling you, hey, there are words inside this text box that you currently can't see. You need to move them to another text box because if not, your document's going to print and it's going to end weird. I don't know if you ever read anything where a sentence ended on a page, and you go to the next page, and it doesn't pick up, right? It's missing something. It's missing something, and it happens all the time in newsletter design, because you make individual boxes, you don't link the boxes, and so words just run out. It doesn't actually have a finished thought to it. InDesign is built so that that doesn't happen. So if you were to copy 18 pages worth of text, Command A, Command C, right out of Word, draw one text box inside of InDesign, and you Command V and paste it in there. Obviously, 18 pages of text are not going to fit into one text box that's in InDesign. You could click the red plus and add a text box. Click the red plus, add a text box. Click the red plus, add a text box. Why is that important? Each one of those text boxes are connected. So if you make the first text box smaller, will the words move over to the second text box? Yeah. So if you made a text box and it was the whole size of the page, but you decided, you know what, I want to move the text box over this way a little bit, make it a little bit thinner so that I can put a picture here, or I can put something here. It'll move the extra words that you want over to the next text box. That's really important. That's called text flowing. It makes sure that no matter how you design your page, all the words will continue to go from one surface area or one text box to the next. So if we place a picture in it that is a circle and we wrap the text around the circle, it will move the words that it moves from line to line to line to the next text box. You should never, in InDesign, make a text box, paste words in, copy more words, make a new text box, paste it. You should always put it into the first text box and then add the text boxes from that box so that they're connected. If not, they're called what's called disjointed. So this box is separate from this box. So what happens if you type some extra words here, but they were from here, and they're not connected? Now you have the sentence here, and you also have the sentence started over here, because they're disjointed, they're not connected. So we want to make sure that if we're using InDesign, especially for multiple pages, that this text box is connected to this text box, this text box is connected to this text box. So with that little cursor that now says, hey, you have more text, take your mouse down to anywhere on the edge of the document and click it. And it adds the words. So if you click on the first text box, there should be no red plus anymore. No red plus anymore. So let's click on the first text box that we made small. Let's click on this that we made small, and let's make it a little wider. The words get removed from the second text box, right? It's really important in multi-page design that you use text appropriately. Right kerning, right letter size, based on how important the words are, starting at 12 point as paragraph size, and then connecting your boxes, connecting your words. InDesign is built on publishing. Now, just for the sake of the process, let's pinch in the second paragraph and make it so we have a red plus. Click on the red plus, go down further in the document, tap your cursor, and you should have 3 paragraphs. If you make the first box smaller, the words move down. They're just connected, so there should be no red pluses in InDesign. So if you're using paragraphs and you're copying them from one place, copying them from a Facebook post, pasting them into a text container in InDesign, but the paragraph container you made is too big based on your design concept, you want to click on the red plus and add another container. If you decide, man, I don't need 3 containers, like this second container is probably fine, right? This second container is probably fine. I'm going to make this, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. You see how this thing has nothing in it anymore? We can get rid of it. So if you need more paragraphs, if you need more text containers, you can hit the little red plus and add. If at any point in time we resize paragraphs because our layout allows us for more room for words, you can always remove the empty container. But you don't want to have any little red pluses. And I say that, and someone's going to give me a flyer where it ends without a paragraph, without a period, and there's going to be missing a couple of words. And I'm going to be like, oh, what happened? I was like, you had a little red plus in your paragraph, which meant your container wasn't big enough for your words. Or you decided to make one word 24 point, which bumped everything down based on the leading and kerning of the paragraph, and a word disappeared. And you can see that really easily. Let's double click on our first paragraph, and let's just make 2 words. So just like Word, highlight it, let's make them bigger. And let's make them heavy. So make them. So now look at the leading here. The adjustment of it because of this cap height being different than this cap height. So you get these weird spaces in here. You also, so look what happens when you move it and the bold letters go to 2 lines. Now you have huge spaces between your first 3 lines of text, and you have standard spaces between the others. That's why in multi-page design, you see a lot of headlines, a lot of taglines, a lot of things where the words are bigger, but it's only on 1 line. Because once you start adjusting cap heights in multiple lines of text, you start getting weird negative space, which sometimes you do see in newspaper layout and stuff still today, because there are some weird white spaces in newspaper layout because of the way they adjust the text based on the article that they're creating. But this is not Photoshop. Photoshop, we're doing individual boxes, we're rotating them, we're scaling them up. In Illustrator, we're making individual boxes, we're playing with the properties of them. This is built for multi-page, multi-text paragraph environments. Now, okay. Now, let's just double check. Are we on our master? Yeah, we're on our master, right? We're on our right master. So if we double click up in the parent or the master area, you're going to notice. So look what happened. Page 1 and 3 have our same text, same paragraph, same thing, right? They're all the odd pages because we did the right master. Look, the left master has nothing on it. The reason it has nothing on it is because up here in our left master, there's nothing on it. So if there are elements we want to appear on every single page, maybe the small logo of a company that we're creating multiple pages of a, we're in ad design class, we're doing menus, and Las Palmas has 10 pages, and it's all big, huge, pretty color images, but their logos on every page of the 10 pages. I would say their menu is actually 10 posters, because it's not like a traditional menu where everything's like text heavy with little pictures of the food next to it. Like they're like decorative posters, and there's 10 of them. But they do have elements that appear on every single page, like a stripe pattern that appears at the top at the bottom. That sort of thing would be something you would put on every page. Now, that tackles text for us. So let's double click on our right master. And let's use our global selection arrow and click on the first paragraph. And let's hold down Shift and select our other paragraphs. So let's select all the paragraphs in our right master. And I want you to do Command C, which is copy. I want you to delete it off of our master, which means they should disappear on pages 1 and 3. And let's double click on page 1 and do Command V, which is paste. So we're only going to put it on page 1. So now you'll notice the right master is empty and page 1 has our text on it. All right. Very good. Now, that is text. Text is controlled by using the text tool. The text tool allows you to draw containers. The size of the container, the bounding box, the blue little box that has handles, just like in Photoshop and Illustrator, controls how much of the words you see based on the size of the container. As you make it smaller, the words do what's called ragging, or bumping from one line to the next. Now, let's see what happens with pictures. So let's double click on the right master. So let's double click on the right master. So the only thing we've tackled is the pen tool, the text tool, the ability to write words. Now, right down here on your toolbar is 2 rectangles. One is called a frame tool, and the other one is a regular old shape tool. And by shape tool, we've already seen this, because we've drawn rectangles and circles in Illustrators, and they have what's called fills and strokes. InDesign is no different. If we wanted boxes, shapes to be drawn on our document, it has a rectangle and a circle or ellipse tool, and it has what's called fill and strokes. So right down here in the toolbar, this is not foreground and background like Photoshop. It is fill and stroke. So this top box is fill, the bottom box is stroke. We know fill is the color inside the shape, and we know stroke is the color around the edge of the shape. So we already kind of know that. Now, when you draw with the text tool, draw the box, it is a text container. When you're placing images inside of InDesign, you should use what's called a frame. So now, let's make sure we're on the right master. So double click up there in your pages to the right master. And let's use our rectangle frame tool. So you see the little rectangle frame tool? Let's take it and draw a box inside of our right master. Draw a box inside of our right master. Now, this is the hardest thing that you will have to tackle inside of InDesign. The hardest thing by far. It's understanding the interaction of images inside of a multi-page environment. Now, if you've ever kind of stumbled upon a YouTube video, an article, something like that, and it's showing any kind of magazine and the history of publication or any kind of thing with magazines, you'll see a lot of stills of documents that just have blue boxes on them. If they just have blue boxes on them, it's because they're trying to lay out the page with just how big the thing will be on the page. We call it thumbnailing when you do it in ad design. You draw a little box and this is where my headline's going to go. And you draw a little box and this is the proportion of my design. And you draw a little box, this is where my support copy goes. And you draw a little circle and this is where my logo goes. We call that thumbnailing. In InDesign, you use frames to thumbnail or to block in areas of your design before you bring elements in. It's just a way to compose your layout before you have anything to actually put in the document. Now, this container is an X container, a frame container, and it's an empty box wanting a picture in it. So it wants an Illustrator image. It wants a Photoshop image. It wants something to be placed in the container that we then can play around with. Now remember, InDesign is a container program, so the X means it's pointing to somewhere else, which means it's pointing to a different file. So let's do this. Let's make sure that the X container is selected. So here's your global selection arrow. Make sure it's selected. And let's go up to File, Place. So let's go up to File, Place. And in File, Place, let's navigate to your style guide. So let's navigate to your style guide. And it's an Illustrator file, right? It's an Illustrator file. So let's navigate to it. Now, before you open it or place it, let's check the little box that says Import Options. Now, the reason we're doing that is because this particular object, the thing that we're placing inside of our container, is multiple pages. Because our style guide is multiple pages. If it was a JPEG, a PNG, a single artboard Photoshop file, we don't need to check the import options. But because we're using assets in a document that's multiple pages, we're selecting the import option. So let's do open. And you're going to see that it's going to give us a preview of our pages, right? This is a preview of our pages. So let's do preview page, which is only the first page in your document. And let's click OK. Now, when you do File, Place, and you select an Adobe file of any kind, Photoshop, Illustrator, Animate, I mean, you can place all kinds of things in InDesign. If it's multiple pages, we want to do show options so we can pick the page that we want to place in there. If it's only one page, we don't need the show options because it's only going to put the one page in there. Now, yours may or may not be like really pretty. It might look like a little pixelated or a little like not perfect. The reason that is because our display performance is set to low quality. Now, that's the first question I always get with students, like, why does my thing not look that great? Remember, InDesign is built on multiple pages, which means a lot of data, a lot of information inside of the file. It wants to maximize speed in the process of data. So let's change it to high quality. So let's change the display performance to high quality. And it should now look like what it looks like inside your Illustrator file. It should be clear now. Now, let's take our global selection arrow and let's pinch in. Let's pinch your container in. What did it do?
I don't see as much of it.
It cropped your image. The container is a picture window. So see how I make it smaller or I make it bigger with my global selection arrow? It is cropping the image. The frame is a picture window that you're placing stuff into. Why the frame is important is because it's a box that has properties. It has a width and a height. It's really important in InDesign because it will then allow us to control how text interacts with the box. But the box is a box. It has a width and a height. So this is the edge on the left, this is the edge on the right, and that's why you see in magazine layout, in novel layout, in publishing layout, why there's always firm edges around images inside the layout. The reason there are firm edges is because the images are in frames, and the frames have a fixed width and height. Now, the blue box is the frame. So let's just make it big enough that we can see part of your design. The orange box in the frame is the object in the frame, and you access that by using the direct select arrow. So let's switch to the direct select arrow. And let's click on the inside of our document. Now, look what is happening. We can move the image in the box. The global selection arrow selects the box. The direct selection arrow selects the object inside of the box. So in essence, this is what they call a clipping mask. So it is clipping the image to the blue box. So if we need to adjust what is inside the box, we can use the direct select arrow and adjust it inside the box. If we need to adjust the container or the frame that the image is in because we need less space or more space based on our design, we need to use our global selection arrow. So I'm going to deselect by tapping away with my global selection arrow and then click. So you see how we can move the box. So let's move it over to the right-hand margin and let's make the box smaller. Move it over to the right-hand side and make it smaller. Now, all right, well that's great. The box is now the right size that I want for my layout, but now I don't see the parts of the image I want. Let's go to the direct select arrow. Let's click inside of the box and let's make our image smaller so that we can see what we want to see inside of our box. Now, the last piece of the puzzle. If you are adjusting the image inside of the box, we want to make sure we hold down Shift so it scales proportionately. Do not just grab the handles and pinch the thing. You'll see it a million times. If you go to church and your church prints a little program or prints a little weekly booklet of some kind, you're going to see images that are squished. You're going to see images that are skewed. You're going to see images that they repositioned to fit the layout, but they didn't actually scale it proportionately. You see it a million times. You'll see it in the local newspaper. It's because they grabbed the image inside the frame and they just grabbed the handles to pinch it to make it the size they wanted, but they didn't hold down Shift and scale proportionately. So if you're scaling things inside of containers in InDesign, please hold down Shift. Always scale proportionately. I don't care if it's text, I don't care if it's images, I don't care what it is. Make sure that you scale proportionately so that the objects are not distorted. That's my number one pet peeve. Nothing should be distorted. Everything should be the appropriate scale and proportion to the object. I don't want a golden retriever to look like a hot dog because you had to squish it to fit it in your design because the design is really long, but it's not very tall, right? Pick a different dog. Do not use a golden retriever and make it look like a hot dog by squishing it. A Weimaraner, I don't know, what do they call those long skinny dogs? Weimaraner, right? Weimaraner? Dachshund. What's a Weimaraner? No, there is a breed. Weimaraner. It's like German or something, but I think it looks like a weird Labrador looking thing. Type in Weimaraner. Is it a Weimaraner? It's like, I don't know how you'd spell that. Weimaraner. It's a German dog. It looks kind of weird. Has very short hair. Go to the images tab. Weimaraner. That's it. Weimaraner. Not Weimaraner. Weimaraner. That's the word I wanted. Very good. Is that German?
Yes.
Yes. Weimaraner. I knew people that had a Weimaraner. You know what the problem with Weimaraners are?
Their eyes.
Oh my god, this is
They're human eyes. See?
They eat rocks.
No, literally.
They literally, some of them eat rocks because there weren't a lot of Weimaraners in the United States, and so breeders would breed them over and over again. And so we had a friend, their dog ate rocks in the yard. Literally ate rocks in the yard because it would dig them up, think it was a treat or something, and they would chew on it and eat it. And it was like, so they had to remove stones and the whole 9 yards. It was the weirdest thing. Weimaraner, thank you. I knew that it was something like that. Not Weimaraner, but Weimaraner. Okay. All right, so frame is the blue box. Content in the frame is the orange box. That is the hardest thing you will ever have to learn about InDesign. The ability to place a picture in a frame, that is the blue box, but change the size of the picture inside the frame to fit your design. That's the hardest part of InDesign. Text tools are easy, drawing with a line segment, drawing a box like a rectangle or a circle. The reason publication design is boring is because it's text and pictures. Text have containers, pictures have containers. Text has text flow, which means flows from one text container to the other. And image containers or frame containers have boxes that have pictures inside of them, like babushka dolls. Anyone know a babushka doll? It's the wooden dolls that you open the little head, and there's a doll
dolls?
inside of the doll. Huh?
I think those are called matryoshka dolls.
Matryoshka?
What
Isn't
did
there a
you say?
Isn't there a babushka?
I thought
Is that like grandma?
Russian nesting dolls.
Yes.
Babushka, isn't that?
I
Am
dated
I
a girl that
going
was
crazy, or doesn't
Ukrainian.
that mean grandmother?
I dated a girl that was Ukrainian in college, and I thought she said they were babushka dolls.
But she
What
might,
is that?
she might have said that because
What
they
is
might have
that?
been something like her grandmother owned.
So her grandmother owned matryoshka dolls?
Yeah, that's probably why she.
So what does babushka mean?
Grandmother.
Ah, she bamboozled me. Yes, she said babushka
Because they were
dolls.
probably her grandmother.
Ah! Language translation problems. I did not speak Ukrainian, and man, that's a bummer. For 20 years, I thought those were babushka dolls, and they were matryoshka dolls.
It's okay.
Owned
I
by
used
the
to thought
babushka.
that manila
Ah!
folders were called vanilla folders.
The what?
I thought that manila folders were called vanilla folders.
Oh, that's okay. They are vanilla.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're boring and colored vanilla. I'm losing Brayson back there. He's now leaning against the post. Okay, text frames, blue shapes. Picture frames, blue shapes. Text frames, red plus signs to flow text to text. Image frames, orange box with direct select that allows you to access the picture inside of the box. Now, Let's see how this works. Now, I would like you to file place on document number 3. So document number 3. Let's get our logo off of parent right spread. So let's get rid of that. So let's delete our image that we put on the right spread. Make sure the right spread is empty inside your master. Nothing on it, because we're going to use page number 3 to kind of compose a couple of things so you can see how this works. So now, with page number 3 selected and nothing on page number 3, which means there should be nothing on your right master, because page number 3 is right of the fold or your right master. Let's do file, place, no frame container. So we're not going to pre-draw our containers. Now, I pre-draw my containers because when I'm organizing in InDesign, I kind of have an idea of where I want to put things, but you don't necessarily have to do that. So let's go file, place, and let's go find a picture from your nonprofit. So let's do file, place, and let's find a picture in your photography folder from your nonprofit. So let's just pick one of those and click open. Now, InDesign's really smart. Like, it knows the files, it knows the formats, it kind of knows everything about the Adobe file type they're trying to put in. So it's questioning color saturation, it's kind of questioning what this thing looks like. Let's say okay. We're not going to do any extra cropping or anything. Let's just say okay. Now, you'll notice that your cursor becomes the picture. Now, you have 2 ways to put an image inside InDesign. You could draw a blue frame, X frame, and place it in there, or you can do file place with no container and take your cursor and draw a box. So let's just click and draw a box. Now, when you click and draw a box in InDesign, but you don't put the frame down first, the box is created based on the proportion of the image. So you see how mine's more square? I don't know like what your image is, but it goes in based on the proportion. So I'm going to let the mouse go. And there it is. Now, if I take my handle and I pinch, it's going to crop the image. Right? If I take my mouse and pinch with my global selection arrow, it's going to crop the image. If I use my direct select arrow, I can move the image inside of the box. File, place, draw the container size that you think you were like, oh, I like this picture to be this big. Right? It creates the X frame for you proportionately to the output of your image. So whatever those width and height pixels are, it draws the box based on that. And then that frame becomes the picture window for that picture. If I went in and made that picture black and white in Photoshop and I reopened up InDesign, would this picture be black and white? Yes. This picture is linked to the picture in your photography folder. If we change any aspect of that picture, .jpeg, .png, whatever it is, adjust the color, adjust the saturation, change the color mode, add a surfer to the bridge. Surfer to the bridge. How about a bungee jumper to the bridge? Is that high enough to jump with a bungee? I wonder. That's the great question. Anyone bungee jump here before? No daredevils?
I want to.
Yes, me too. I do, but then they told me it like realigns your spine, like because of the way the cord is, that it like shocks your system a little bit when you get to the bottom of the bungee. That's the negative for me. The last thing I need is to be like, oh my gosh, now my back hurts because I jumped off this bridge.
If you already have a bad one, do you think it could fix your back?
It could do that though too. Indeed, it could realign you. Yes. If you add anything to this picture later, it will get adjusted in InDesign. It is just a container. It is an X frame with a picture inside of it. If you add a layer to the Photoshop file, if you add text to the Photoshop file, if you add anything to the Photoshop file, it will change in here. It is tied to that picture. If you change elements in your Illustrator file. You wanted to make the words bigger in your logo. You wanted to change one of the colors in your logo. If you save that Illustrator file and you go back into InDesign, it is going to update to the new color, to the new scale, to the new proportion, to the new whatever you did to it. This is just a container program. You aren't creating original art inside of InDesign. You are using InDesign to compose your art. Pictures point to a picture, text container.
So, like, when would you want to bring it in this way, and when would you want to, like, pre-make your container?
So I pre-make my containers. So let's say I'm making like a trifold brochure. So it has 3 panels all on one page, right? Because it folds. I'll pre-draw my picture boxes because I already know I only have this much real estate and I know there's going to be a lot of words. So I want to start with a container that's already a general size of what I'm doing. And it also allows me to lay out the text without placing the picture because I can do the text and keep the container as just an empty X, which then helps me kind of figure out the words before I do the pictures. But lots of people do the pictures first because they're visual people. So they'll figure out the pictures and then make the words work around the pictures. So it's kind of 2 ways of thinking. I use the X's to plan out how much text I have.
So it's
and
just
what the
personal preference.
personal preference, personal preference. There's no wrong or answer to that because it's how your brain lays things out. Like in ad design class, I spent a lot of time talking to them that I build background to foreground. So I build the primary background elements and then I stack the elements for middle ground and then I put the words for foreground. So I work from the bottom piece of paper to the top piece of paper. In InDesign, I work column left to column right, left of page to right of page. And so my brain works, all right, if I'm going to put words on this side, how much room do I have for my image? So if I know my text is going to take up this much space, then I already know that I'm going to have to do like 2 or 3 pictures like this over here. So my brain works left to right, top to bottom in InDesign. So I pre-plan out with my frames how much room I have for stuff before I fall in love with the stuff. Because if you fall in love with the stuff, sometimes you don't get what you need for your composition in the appropriate spaces. Like you let one thing dictate the other things. InDesign's all about words, so the words have to dictate over the pictures. Now, let's file place again. So let's file place again. And let's go into our style guide, our brand guide. And let's place the page that has your logos on it. So let's find in the style guide, file place, and let's find your style guide page that has just the logos. So I'm going to do file place, and mine's called KRFB styleguide.ai. I'm going to turn on my import options because I've got a lot of words, a lot of pages in this. I'm going to click open. Now, page number 1 should have your logo on it. If it doesn't, we can go into the range button and find the page that has your logo in it. So we want to find the page that has, like for me, page 3 has all 4 of my logos. So that's probably good for you guys too, page 4. So let's click range and scroll to page 4, and then you can click preview page and it will freeze us at page 4. Or we can do range and just do 3 of 3, because that's page 3. I'm going to do preview page. Let's click OK. And here is our thumbnail. So now we're going to place our logo in the lower right-hand corner of page number 3. So let's take our cursor, our mouse, and let's draw a container for the lower right-hand corner. So here it is. Now you'll notice our document's square, so it's going to give us a square thumbnail. Now, once you have that container placed with your page 3. Let's take our direct select, and I want you to hold down shift and make it where we only see one logo. So let's scale it up so that we only see one logo. So here it is. So I made it big enough that I only see one logo. Now, once I have that positioned where one logo is about the width of our box, I'm going to go back to our global selection arrow. I'm going to deselect, I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to crop it so that it's just one logo. So let's see how that works. File, place, we place the Illustrator file. The Illustrator file placed the entire artboard, the page we picked, number 3. But that's got a lot of stuff on it. But we only wanted to isolate it to one thing. So we made the object inside of the frame a little bit bigger, so it filled the width of our box. And then we used our global selection arrow to change the dimensions of our box. Does that make sense? Frame is a box, it's a picture window pointing to Illustrator. So if I changed page number 3 in Illustrator and moved that logo to a different spot on my page and saved it, would it move in here?
Yes.
Yes. So if I took that logo on page number 3 in my style guide and decided I wanted to move it 3 inches over here, and I saved the Illustrator file, if I came back to InDesign, that logo would be moved 3 inches. And in this case, it wouldn't be in the box anymore. It would be white because I moved it. It is only a container program. All right, save this document. What did we name it? We haven't named it. Let's do save as. And we're going to save it as your nonprofit's name. So mine keep wrong, Floyd, beautiful. We're going to save it. Now, your homework. You only have one thing for homework. Find an event for your nonprofit that is going to be taking place sometime. Next class, we're going to take all of our assets, our photos, our logos, our fonts, our color palettes, and we're going to make a flyer for your style guide using InDesign. So find an event for your nonprofit where there's the title of the event, the date, the location, some information about it, and we're going to make a flyer in class on Tuesday to put in your style guide. I'm going to bump the due date of your style guide flyer until next Thursday, so we have Tuesday and Wednesday to kind of develop this
What
stuff.
about the one-set wire for a month?
We're waiting for that. That's the same thing, because we're going to do the website and the flyer all in one swoop. So I'm going to move that submission date to Thursday next week. Have an event. Have a good weekend. Rock on.
If the event has already happened, can we still make a flyer?
Yeah, why don't we just change the date when we
Just
do
change the date
it
when we
and make it the next year, 2025. So if it like happens every year, perfect. We'll just adjust it. Yep. All right, gang. Have a good